Hey folks, Pastor Stephen here with Elder Sheena Roller, and we are here to start our STAYcation Bible School, and we are so very grateful that you could join us in doing something a little bit new. Have you ever done anything like this before, Sheena?
Well, this year, yes. When I started teaching through a computer, and this year has changed a lot of things. So, yeah.
So we're doing things a little bit differently. So this year, instead of having a vacation Bible school where we all get together, we are doing what's called a STAYcation Bible School, where we are going to be releasing some videos to talk about the scripture for this week that you can watch with your family, along with some activities and things that we are going to be giving to you shortly. So we're very grateful that you could be with us. The theme this year is Feet That Follow. So Sheena, can you tell us a little bit about the theme and what we're going to be jumping into in the next few weeks?
Sure. So Feet That Follow, of course, are following Jesus. And a lot of the stories that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks are very familiar stories. And so I'm excited about seeing some of those stories and really delving into them in different ways. But in all of the stories, it's about following Jesus. And so we'll look at how we can follow Jesus in the stories, in music, in what we can make and what we can do. And one of the things that I'm really excited about that will be a part of this is looking at how others have followed Jesus. And so we'll actually look at people around the world that are following Jesus and how they're doing that. Even in this time when we're all at home, we can still pray and be with those people. So Feet That Follow is our theme, and we're very excited that you're joining us.
All right, thanks, Sheena. So we are going to be going on a 5-day journey together, and today is day 1. And this is a story about Jesus traveling to the lake, and today's theme is Jesus calls the disciples. So now we're going to pause and have some other folks read this story of Jesus calling the disciples. It actually shows up in 3 different Gospels, in the Gospels of Matthew, the Gospel of Mark, and the Gospel of Luke. So now let us pause for a second and listen to the scripture, and then Sheena and I are going to talk a little bit about it together. Okay, so here's the scripture. And now we're reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 4, verses 18 through 22. Let's listen to what God is saying to God's church. As he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you fish for people." Immediately they left their nets and followed him. As he went from there, he saw 2 other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, in the boat with their father Zebedee, mending their nets, and he called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him. Holy wisdom, holy word, thanks be to God. All right, so we just heard the story of Jesus calling the disciples by the lake. So I'm curious, Sheena, where was Jesus traveling today, or in the story that we just read?
Jesus was near the Sea of Galilee. Okay. And one of the things I think about, and maybe our kids that are listening would be familiar with, is that is something that we have in our godly playroom. We have the beach, and then we have the sea or the lake. It's a sea, but it's not like a gigantic ocean. So that space, and we often say, this is the Sea of Galilee, and it's so important that we need something to represent it in our room. So hopefully that's a visual that some of our kids can see in their heads.
And what was happening when Jesus was at the Sea of Galilee today?
Well, often what's happening in the Sea of Galilee is fishing and boating. There's lots of stories where they go out in a boat or they're out with their nets. And so this one, that's what the disciples were doing. They were fishing because that's what they did in order to get food and in order to live, make a living.
Have you ever been fishing?
I have. I don't love it. My least favorite part of fishing is baiting the hook. And so if someone else baits my hook and then I can fish and someone else takes whatever I get off my hook, then I'm great at fishing. But I don't like the other parts of it. Olivia loves fishing.
Yeah.
And she goes fishing with her grandpa and in fact has now gotten 2 different fishing rods as she's gotten older that he does with her. So Have you been fishing?
Yes. So before I moved here to Lexington, I used to live in a place called New York, Long Island, which is a very, long island with lots of beaches, and I used to fish a good bit. I was never particularly good at it. One of the things that fishing taught me is it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of learning. It takes a lot of trying and then messing up and then trying again and messing up and then trying again and learning and then succeeding. So I kind of think that that's maybe what the fisher people were doing in the story today.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So Jesus comes out and he sees these folks that are fishing, and he said to them that if they followed him, that they would fish for something else. Do you remember what Jesus said that they would fish for?
Oh, it was people. They would fish for people. Fishers of men, I think, is what's usually in the Bible.
It's kind of a funny thought.
It's really
isn't
weird.
It?
Yeah. Just these little people like floating around in the water.
Yeah. It's so. What do you think Jesus meant when he said not to fish for fish, but to fish for people? I mean, if you are one of the fishermen, who in this case who was it? Peter and James and John, the Zebedee boys. What do you think they thought when they heard Jesus say this?
I wonder if they did think that, like suddenly there were going to be people in the water like this and they were going to grab them up. But I don't think that's really what Jesus meant. I think Jesus meant that to represent the idea that as people who followed him, they would be bringing other people into that teaching. And so as they went along, they would fish for people, meaning they would tell other people about Jesus and they would come to the group as well, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's all about, when you fish, you gather something. Do you know what it means to gather?
Yeah, you bring it together. Like you think about a net full of fish, I think.
To bring things together.
Yeah.
So I think maybe Jesus was saying that they were going to try to bring people together, but that still leaves a lot of questions in my mind. And I think it's good that in a story like this that we have questions about it.
Oh, definitely.
I think that's a good thing.
I think Jesus taught a lot through questions that didn't always have easy answers. So I think, he was trying to teach the disciples in a way that made them question. Because I think sometimes when you ask questions, that's when you learn more.
Yeah. So if Jesus is calling these first people, Peter and James and John, to be his disciples, he's asking them to do something that is active. Like he's asking them to do something, ways that we can be active, or like by running or walking or cooking. He's not just asking them just to
sit in their boat.
So what are some ways that we can be active to follow Jesus? Or what are some ways maybe around you that you see other people being active in following Jesus?
Well, I think that it's a little different now, because I would say, talk to somebody, have a nice conversation, give a hug, and those things can't happen anymore right now. So I think we can still be active, though, in the ways that we interact with people, and in the ways that we take care of other people, and the ways that we take care of our world. I think that when we are at school, or when we are at church, or other places when we are learning more about who God calls us to be, and the ways that we can be followers of Christ, that we are doing things to learn. That's what I'm doing a lot of this summer, because I can't really do a lot of things outside with lots of people and things. So I'm doing a lot of questioning and learning about God's world and my part in it.
So one last question. In this story, at the very end of it, we're told in the story that Peter, James, and John were not alone. Who were James and John with? Who were they fishing with?
They were fishing with their dad.
They're fishing with their dad, whose name was Zebedee. And then the end of the story, James and John with Peter follow Jesus, which means that they left their dad behind. So I'm curious, what do you think Zebedee felt? What do you think that Peter or that John and James' father felt as he saw his two sons walk away with Jesus?
Oh, I'm sure he felt abandoned and alone. But I want to ask, like, why couldn't he go? Why couldn't Zebedee just go with his boys and follow Jesus too? And I don't know, maybe there was other family at home that he had to take care of. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's hard to have family leave. It's really hard.
And it must have been tough for James and John as well.
Yeah.
And just that's a lot to give up, because they were leaving something that they knew how to do. Fishing was what they did.
Yeah.
And then Jesus asked them to do something new, and that must have been really hard. And sometimes I think Jesus asks us to do new things, and new things can be really hard.
Yeah, especially, like, he asked them to also leave who they knew and go out and talk to some of these people that they don't know, and some of these people that maybe seemed a little different than they were. And so that's kind of hard too sometimes, to talk to people that we don't know, or we don't really know how to find some things that we can talk about.
So a lot of stuff in this short story to unpack. And now that Sheena, did you have any other thoughts?
No, I'm just still feeling sorry for poor Zebedee.
Yeah. So there's still some questions that we have about this story. I have been teaching and preaching this story for several years now, and I still have questions about it.
Oh, yeah.
So best way to deal with questions is by exploring them. So now you're going to do that with your family, with some different activities that are in this STAYcation Bible School, and we will join you the next day for day 2. Okay?
We'll see you then.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so.